Hi everybody, in today's video I'm going to build a curtain which will enable me to use the control room as a recording booth. I'm going to show you the entire process in detail. This will be part 1 of the acoustic treatment of the studio, so let's dive right into it. First you got to take some measurements in the studio itself. The length, width and height of the glass, as well as the walls surrounding the glass. Even though there's a 90-degree angle in that glass window, I will be making the curtain as one piece that will go around this 90-degree angle. So it will need to have some kind of a system to make it turn 90 degrees. There are a few question marks in this project as to where is the curtain going to be fixed. At the top of the wall, below the pictures. Ideally, I would love to keep those pictures in the studio because they just look nice. Where is it going to finish? Right at the bottom of the glass or all the way down to the floor, which would be useless and a waste of material.
Yeah. Yep.
This is what happens when you work alone. No helper, it's a mess. Okay, now that I have all my measurements, it's time to sit down and do some planning. Where does the curtain start? Completely in the left corner of the room? Or does it start more like right at the edge of the glass window? If the curtain is going to be going left to right, up or down, like a blind, do I make it in one piece going all around that 90-degree corner? Or do I divide it into two pieces, which also brings in another set of problems? I also have to consider the amount of material because I'm going to be using a leftover of the same material as the big curtain in the staircase that I kept in my cold storage for years. It's going to match perfectly, aesthetically, so I have to be cost effective and work effective. So there's all kinds of little details here that I have to plan before I even start the real work. There are so many different ways to go about this project, but I'm gonna have to choose what suits me the best. And I would love to hear your ideas on how you would have done this in the comments below. I just found this on Amazon. It's a flexible curtain track system that looks pretty amazing. It looks strong, well built, not expensive, and it just looks like it could be the solution to the 90-degree problem. So boom, I'm ordering this thing. So here is the fabric that I just took out of the cold storage. It has been sitting there for about 15 years. And as you can see, the fabric has even discolorated at the bottom. The part that was in contact with the concrete floor, which holds a lot of humidity. See this greenish color? There might even be some mold in there. But I'm not too concerned, because anyway, all this part of the material is going to be cut away. But the rest of the material is in pretty good shape. It's very thick, very heavy, fire resistant, and sound absorbing. I think it's going to make for a very nice curtain. So the first step is to cut the length of material that I'm going to need. After careful measurements, we're now ready to cut. For now, we're just cutting the width to make sure we cover all the glass from left to right. We're not cutting any height just yet. It should be noted that for the purpose of sound absorption, the curtain will only be the same width as the glass itself, without any multiplying factor. It will lay flat on the window without any excess or undulation. Alright, now that we have our entire piece of material, it's now time to do the lining. And for that, I'm going to need a sewing machine. And for that, there's no better place to go than my mother's house. So let's go!
Hello.
Hola! And here is the monster. You know what this is? This is a sewing machine, just like back in the old days. I don't even know if it works. I don't even know how it works, but I'll figure it out. Oh my God. This is Chinese mixed with Japanese and Egyptian hieroglyphs of some kind. I have no idea what all those buttons do or how to set up this machine. Okay, let's turn it on. Now I gotta figure out how to put this thread in the machine. This is a real mystery. Let's put some thread that matches the color of my curtain. Wow, it works. It actually works. Incredible. This machine hasn't been used for at least the past 10 or 15 years even. So what I'm doing now is I'm rolling some thread on the smaller bobbin, which will go in a little compartment underneath the needle and which is needed to sew. Now let's pass the thread in all these little hooks and levers. There's so many of them where the thread has to go from left to right, up, down, clockwise, counterclockwise. And if you pass the thread in the wrong direction, you mess everything up. I had to watch a tutorial on YouTube to learn how to pass this thread. And be careful, every machine is different. Passing the thread through the needle hole is a real challenge past 50 years old. You really need good eyes. And this is where the two threads somehow get mixed together and make it possible to actually saw. Alright, I think I'm gonna be here for a long time, so it's time for a good coffee. Don't kid yourself, guys. My mother looks like she's sleeping, but in fact she's overlooking and making sure I don't break anything. So in order to do this lining, the first thing I want to do is fold the edge twice. So first I fold about 1/2 inch, and then I fold it again another 1/2 inch.
Aprendió de todo. Este chiquito.
In the meantime, my mom is making fun of me. She doesn't use the machine anymore, but she was a real expert sawer. So it removes a total of 1 inch in length, and the lining itself will be 1/2 inch. Then I'm going to use needles every 8 to 10 inches or so to hold the lining in place temporarily. Of course, this is going to be a long process because I have to make a lining on all 4 sides, but for now I will only do 3 sides because I haven't cut the height yet. So I will do one of the long sides and the 2 smaller sides, and then I will have to come back for the 4th side once the length has been cut to its final size. Now it's time for the real sawing. This is the first try. We'll see how it goes.
Now we're gonna try. Then you put your foot on the pedal. And you start.
At least the machine works. It's already a good thing. So we're removing the needles as we get to them. It's important to always make sure the lining is neat and straight and that it doesn't get undone while manipulating the fabric. That's why I only remove the needles one by one at the last moment. There are so many possible adjustments and settings on this machine which I didn't even bother with, so I just hope the result will be okay. This material is a very heavy velvet that is used in theaters to absorb the sound. So it's basically an acoustic material that is extremely effective for sound absorption. Wow, this is kind of fun. Our grandmothers probably had a great time with these machines.
The machine screwed up. You see the machine screwed up completely, and it did this kind of thing, as you can see. So I'm gonna have to undo all of this and redo it once again. Unfortunately, it's the long side, so I'm gonna have to remove everything to undo everything, all the sewing on that side, and redo the whole thing. It's a pain in the butt. It's gonna take quite a while to undo this. Cutting the thread is not that much of a problem. As you can see, it's pretty fast. The real problem is then removing all those little threads. That's really a pain. And the reason why the machine screwed up is because one of the bobbins was defect.
So yeah, the machine screwed up on me. Everything looked perfect on the visible face of the fabric, but in the back, it was a real mess. These are all the little pieces of thread I removed from the curtain one by hand after that screw up. Really, it's my fault. I should have checked just to make sure everything was nice, but I just kept on going without even checking until I finished the entire long side of the curtain. And then I noticed. So even if the machine did screw up, it was basically my mistake. And the worst part is that I still have to redo the lining and put all these needles again. This mistake cost me about 4 or 5 hours of extra work just to fix it. It was a pain. And now I'm gonna start all over again. So back to square one. 3-ply lining, needles, trying to keep everything straight and equal. Alright, now back to sewing. Now you can be sure I'm going to check it right away and regularly as I go along to make sure there's no mix-up in the threads.
Et voilà. Cool!
So here is the end result. It's really not bad after all. Look how neat and clean it came out. In the end, I'm really satisfied with the result. Alright, so let's roll back the fabric and go back home to continue the project. Here's the package from Amazon. This is probably the curtain track kit. So we can see the track, it's all rolled up. These are the hooks, the brackets. These little clips are so easy to put in place and they hold the curtain perfectly without any holes, rods or anything else. It makes it really easy. The spring is strong, it holds very tight. The rollers are nice too, in plastic, but they look strong. What I don't like is this little hook in the middle of this piece. It looks like the weak link in the chain. It also makes the height of the whole fixing piece more than 2 inches, which increases the distance between the curtain and the track unnecessarily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify all these pieces by removing this little black hook altogether to join the clip with the roller directly. So the total length of the piece will be about 1 inch shorter, and that will be much easier to manage. This is going to take some time, but it is really necessary to make everything fit nicely according to the measurements. In fact, if I left those long hooks on, the curtain would be so low that it would not even cover the top of the glass. So it really doesn't give me a choice. After making a couple of them, you kind of get the hang of it and it gets easier. So this is how it looks now. The clip is attached directly to the roller, just with a little triangular piece. And now we're ready for the real work. Proper attire required. Let's get the tools. I just wanted to cut a little piece of that track just for a little test to see how it interacts with the brackets and everything, but this just proved to me that this track was in fact much stronger than it seemed. It looks like just a piece of cheap plastic, but in reality, underneath this plastic lies a heavy-duty steel sheet, and in a sense, it was reassuring. Nah. Not at all. This is not the way to work. Forget this. Let's do it like a pro, okay? There you go. Always use the right tools for whatever you're doing and never neglect safety. So here's the bracket with a little piece of the track. I'm just figuring out how they articulate together and how strongly they hold to each other. Now I am marking exactly the locations where the brackets will be screwed onto the wall. Since I want to keep my pictures on the wall, and those pictures are just 12 inches wide, I will install one bracket at the left and at the right of each picture frame. That means that there will be about 14 inches between each bracket, which is plenty. Alright, so now that all the markings are done, let's install those brackets. I already located all the studs around the glass window to make sure that the brackets will be screwed on solid wood. Okay, so this is how it looks with all the brackets installed. Now let's put on the track. Straightening the track was difficult and took me quite some time. And quite honestly, it doesn't really get completely straight, but I'll live with it. Snapping the tracks on the brackets is a breeze. But doing this all alone is really not ideal. If you have anybody that can help, it will really make things much easier. Up to now, it was difficult to use the control room as a recording booth because the big glass window generates so much early reflections, making it not suitable for a recording booth. Glass is the worst material when it comes to early reflections of the sound. So by putting a curtain, I will be able to use this room as both a control room and a recording booth. So here's the track mounted on the brackets. Not perfectly straight, but reasonably good. Now back to the curtain. I'm going to install the clips on the long side of the curtain, the side where the border has been done. The clips are going to be 12 inches from each other. It's important to be as regular as possible in order to have a consistent folding of the curtain. And even if the curtain is quite heavy, since there's a clip about every 12 inches or so, their strength adds up, and so the total system holds very well the full weight of the curtain.
Petit chien, lève-toi de là.
And now we're going to try the curtain directly on the track for the first time, just to see how it goes and how it all fits together. HI, human intelligence. Huh? How everything gets easier with practice. The more you do it, the easier it gets. Okay, so from the very first try, we can already see the biggest problem arising, and it's that 90-degree angle. This is really an obstacle to the passage of the curtain. As you can see, the way it is now, it doesn't turn at all. No matter what, I'm gonna have to soften this angle so that the curtain travels smoothly through it without any resistance. Obviously, it's ugly as hell right now, but I'm not worried about this for now.
That's not so bad, you know that? Now, okay, perfect. Okay, so the next step is to see how low we're gonna cut this. I'm gonna cut it here and put another track on the lower part. And
now that the curtain is up on the wall, I can measure exactly where to cut
now
at the bottom.
The upper part, perfect. That's
I also
exactly
decided to
where I
put a second track at the bottom parallel to the first one, so that the curtain will be much more stable and will travel more smoothly.
Qu'est-ce que tu en penses, Adamus?
So now some more measurements. Wow, it's really not turning that 90-degree angle. I'm really gonna have to find a solution for this. So we measure the length. Now we're doing all the markings on the curtain itself, drawing a line where the fabric will be cut, taking in consideration the length of the glass, the height of the rollers, the hooks, the clips, the position of the track on the wall, and the lining still to be done. This is going to be the final length of the curtain, and this is exactly where I'm going to cut. Cutting time. No mistake will be forgiven at this point. So I went back to my mother's and I did the lining on the last long side. So now all 4 borders are done, and thus I can install the clips on the bottom part of the curtain. For that, I'm going to use a ruler to make sure that those clips go exactly at the same position than the upper row on the top of the curtain. So basically the clips at the top and at the bottom should be facing each other very precisely in order to have a consistent folding and unfolding of the curtain. See how easy it is to put those clips on? So now we're trying it on for the second time, and that is to see exactly where the lower track will have to be screwed on the wall. Obviously, you want to avoid too much tension or too much loose between the upper and lower track. So you want to make sure that the bottom track is just at the right height.
Yes.
And now, with the curtain on, we're going to install the lower brackets. Now let's clip that track on the brackets, trying to keep it as straight as possible. As you can see, it's far from being straight. Eventually it gets done, but this would be much easier with a helper. Oops, it looks like I forgot a bracket.
Oh. E. Forgot one.
This is the termination piece that prevents the rollers to get out of the track. And now let's put all those rollers inside the track and see how it goes. Here's the bottom termination piece. And here's what it looks like with both the top and the bottom parts attached to the track with all the rollers and clips. Of course, the curtain needs to be ironed, but we can see there's not too much tension or too much loose between the upper and the lower parts. Some sections in the upper part seem to have some horizontal loose, but this is just due to the position of some upper clips that are too far apart as compared to their lower counterpart. This is just a small adjustment to do in the position of the clips. The top and the bottom series really have to be at the exact same position. But this is only going to be adjusted towards the end of the project. For now, I'm just testing the opening and closing of the curtain and see what problems need to be solved and what needs to be improved. This is where the folding becomes important. As you can see, if the clips are not perfectly facing each other, the folding will not happen. Right now, I'm doing it by hand, but eventually that folding has to happen by itself. When I made the lining on the small side, I left like a little tunnel of about ½ an inch in diameter along the right small side of the curtain. And that was to allow for these small rounded wood sticks to be inserted in there just to make that side a little more rigid and easier to keep straight. And now back to the decor. Putting back my Jazzman picture frames. I bought these plastic hooks on Amazon just to hold the excess nylon rope on each side of the curtain. They just stick on the wall with 3M tape, but frankly, they're not very strong, and at the end of the day, these hooks were not very practical. They're nice, but not what I was looking for. So I'll just put them on, but this is only going to be temporary. And here's some Velcro that I put in there just to hold the curtain tightly folded when it's completely opened. Velcro is easy and extremely efficient. And here's what it looks like once it's all put together with the curtain nicely folded. This nylon rope that I put from one side of the curtain to the other to make it easy to open and close it was an important part of the project. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to film that part, but I did spend quite some time to figure out the right system that would work, especially how to turn that 90-degree angle. I did find a solution that works very well and that I'm going to show you in a minute. So here is this funny piece that I made. It looks very strange, but really works very well. You can't buy this piece in the store, alright? You won't find this anywhere. So what is it exactly? Well, the main part, the round metal piece with the rubber at one end, is in fact a door stopper, which is fixed to another metal piece right on top, which is just a stainless steel bracket that I have fitted and that is fixed to the track itself. Then, at the back of the door stopper, there's some kind of hook that is fixed at the bottom of the door stopper by 2 holes. The whole system relies on the fact that the hook is closed at the bottom, but completely open at the top. And this is precisely what makes it work. So the fact that it's closed at the bottom holds the rope and prevents it from falling down. And then the fact that it's open at the top of the hook allows for the rope to jump out of its position against the door stopper just when the curtain reaches the corner angle. And this is what allows the curtain to turn that 90-degree angle without blocking. Of course, this assembly is completely custom made, and I had to do a lot of trial and error before I could come up with that concept. But trying different things, eventually you get to something that works. You get to a solution. I also put a little nut at the end of the cord to prevent it from going further than it should. And just to make it easier to hold the rope, I made myself these little handles out of wood that I painted in white. So you have to keep in mind that this curtain is only going to be closed when I'm recording. So that means when I'm using the studio here, not as a control room, but as a recording booth. And that means my musicians will be sitting here, singing or playing guitar or anything else. And that's when I don't want that glass to be part of the soundscape because I don't want the reflections from that glass. So that's the only moment where I'm going to close that curtain. And that's why, to be very honest, this system is not meant to be open and closed on a daily basis. It wouldn't be very practical for that. For example, you see all that rope here hanging, normally it would have to be rolled around this little hook here, but just to roll and unroll this every day would really be a pain. So really it's not meant for that. I would need to find a better roller than this to make that part easier. Now I want to demonstrate the mechanism, especially the corner here, which was the most challenging part of this whole project. So here we go. I'll grab the rope and start pulling the curtain. First thing that is in my way is this picture here. That really I should remove, but my heart doesn't let me. So when I pull that rope, the curtain starts coming. I'm doing it very slow so that you guys can see. Now watch what's happening here. You see where the rope is? It's sitting right at the bottom of the hook. Now look what's happening when the curtain comes in. Look what's happening when I get to the corner. Boom! And it went right through. That's it. So look at where the rope is now. It's not sitting at the bottom of the hook anymore. It's sitting behind the hook. And that's the magic of it. It's the height of this hook that is just where it should be so that the rope could jump behind it at the right moment. Now I'm going to go and grab the rope on this side and go backwards. Check it out. There you go. And I didn't even have to force at all. Now, of course, it's going to stop here because of the speaker, but this is not a problem with the curtain. So basically, it works pretty well besides the obstacles that I put in the middle. Especially this little gadget here is by far the superstar of the project. Trust me, I had to think quite a bit to come up with this kind of setup. It's just trial and error until you eventually end up getting something that works. So that's it, guys. I hope you liked it. I hope you got something out of this video. At least I hope you got some ideas. I mean, it's an interesting project. I mean, you get to touch from sewing to construction to materials to ideas, anything. So please leave some comments. I'm very interested in knowing what you think. I appreciate any ideas. If you like it, if you don't, it doesn't matter as long as you just tell me what you think. At least we engage in a conversation. I'm looking forward to my next video where I'm gonna be building such an incredible, beautiful project. You guys are gonna be amazed. I will leave it at that so that I don't burn the surprise. Don't forget to subscribe. It's very important for me. I really appreciate your support.